for almost as long as I can remember, I have had an affinity for the superhuman. For me, it started when I was probably about 5 years old with Superman. And I'm not sure why or how I developed a fascination with Superman, because I hadn't consumed any kind of Superman media. I couldn't read. I hadn't read a comic book. I hadn't seen a movie of Superman, but I loved Superman. And on my 5th birthday, my parents surprised me with a special evening of ice cream sundaes and a screening of the original 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman, which I loved. And I remember watching it that night, and we get to the scene maybe about like 3/4 of the way through the film where Lex Luthor places a necklace with a large chunk of kryptonite around Superman's neck and pushes him into a swimming pool. And Superman is just slowly drowning until Lex leaves the room and his girlfriend hops into the pool and pulls Superman out. But before she had the chance to do that, I went absolutely catatonic and was just like a mess of tears, and they had to stop the movie for a long time and talk me down from it. But that's how much I loved Superman. My mom had this, I started dressing up like Superman, and the way I did it was my mom had this dainty red, kind of sheer red negligee that I was probably never supposed to see. And I realized that the two thin spaghetti straps of it could be brought together and put around a 5-year-old's neck, and then you can drape the negligee behind yourself and run around the house and fly. And because it was so sheer and thin and lightweight, it could just kind of flap behind you as you ran. When Halloween came around that year, my mom actually made me a handmade Superman costume out of sweatpants and red fabric and Sharpie, and she made me a real ass cape to go with that costume. But I didn't wear it. I went with the negligee for Halloween. It just felt better that way. So my love for superheroes extended out for years after that into my childhood. My love of Superman grew into a love for Batman and the Ninja Turtles and every superhero character that I had any access to. And it all came to a head for me when I went into a convenience store close to Halloween when I was about 8 years old. And I saw on display just this like cut rate bargain basement rack of masks. And they were imagine the most generic like intellectual property free mask that you can make. What is it? What's copyright free? Open source isn't the term I'm thinking of, but in any case, public domain. Just a public domain. It's just a black oval with like a little contour for a nose and 2 eye holes. And I saw that mask and it was calling to me, and it said to me, "You too can be a superhero." So I brought home that mask. I paid for it because I am a law-abiding citizen. And I brought it home, and I went into my room, and I felt like Peter Parker crafting his Spider-Man suit. And I was like, what else do I have? And I found this black robe that I had, and the robe tie, like the belt for the robe. I took that out, and I put that around my head, and I tied it back, and I put the mask on. And I looked in the mirror, and the face that was looking back to me was like a cross between Zorro and the Lone Ranger and the Dread Pirate Roberts. And I was really feeling myself. So the next day at school, I tucked that in to my windbreaker. And when recess came, I was like, I am going to fight crime on the playground today. So I went behind a tree, like I suited up. Nobody knew who the hell I was after that. And I just kind of patrolled the playground. And the thing that I discovered was in the typical playground, and I would say like urban, suburban, rural, any playground, not a lot of crime. Like not a lot of crime that would merit like vigilante force. So eventually I found this sliding board, and there was this kid. His name was Kyle Sweet, and he was standing at the top of the ladder to the sliding board, and he was just sort of standing sentry there. And this kid had a mohawk and an earring. So, like, he was the criminal element. And I did discover that what he was doing was gatekeeping the sliding board, which is a crime. Actually, it is in fact legally a crime. So I went up the ladder and I told Kyle, hey, you can't do that. You can't tell people that they can or can't go down the slide. Everyone has a right to go down the slide. And he wouldn't listen to reason. So I needed to resort to physical force. So I punched him in the stomach as hard as I could, and he cried. And as he started to cry, I realized how much trouble I was going to get in. So I shimmied right back down the ladder, and I ran as fast as I could away from the slide. And in that moment, when I think back to it now, it reminds me of that moment near the end of the 2008 Christopher Nolan film, The Dark Knight, when Batman decides to take the rap for all of District Attorney Harvey Dent, a.k.a. Two-Face, all of his murders. And as Batman is running, after having said, I did that, Commissioner Gordon's giving a speech to his son, and it's the final monologue of the film, and he says, so we'll hunt him because he can take it. He'll be a silent guardian, a watchful defender, a dark knight. And if I'd seen that movie at the time, I would have related to this. But I hadn't seen that. I'd only seen The Fugitive. So I asked myself, what would Dr. Richard Kimball do? And I realized I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to be identified. So I had this windbreaker, and it was reversible. So I reversed it. And I hid the mask. So, how would anyone possibly know that I was the same guy that punched Kyle Sweet in the stomach? It took about 5 minutes for the recess aide to find me. And it took about 1 minute for me to start crying, realizing how much trouble I was going to be in for resorting to vigilante force on the playground. So there I was, with tears in my eyes and my windbreaker inside out, approaching the stairs, being brought back inside before recess was even over. And I looked up at the recess aide, and I kind of felt into my jacket pocket, and I said, is it okay if I put my mask on so no one will know that I'm crying? And she said that was okay. So I put on my Dread Pirate Roberts Zorro Lone Ranger mask, and I walked into the school looking like a true hero, something beyond a mere mortal. And nobody knew that I was crying. Thank you.